Oshe Tangi Kopanyutopsho. And let's do the four limitless contemplation. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness, which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal, impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semchen tamche dewa tang dewe ju tang den ba ju tik, dungal chichu tang drawa ju tik, dungal mepe dewa tampa tang mindra wa ju tik, nering chak tang ni tang drawe tang nung chembo lane ba ju tik. So good evening to everybody. And we're going to go on with meditation, non-meditation, contemplation, and pondering, and other not that at the bottom. I decided that we could really call pondering reflecting as well. I thought we could use both those words for that, which would really answer your thing last week. So I want to start with a cute thing that Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche said, and I think, Eric, it's mostly for you, this story, okay? So it goes like this. Tulku Urgyen says, my own root guru, Samten Gyatso, said, what is the use of sitting for a long time in a state of stupor, the stupid meditation state, he calls it. We have been there like that since beginningless time anyway, sleeping in the nest of the all-ground, the alaya. Better to practice for a short moment, but completely wide awake. Very important. And so Tulku Urgyen says, he says that the main point of practice, looking at his guru, is to do short sessions, but many times, short periods repeated many times. And when he says, when Samten Gyatso came into a room, people could not bear to look at his eyes. He was overwhelming to look at. His eyes were very special. And he said, you can see in the eyes of a yogi, you could see whether the yogi has good practice or not. Because when the eyes are very, very bright and clear, it is due to remaining in Rigpa, in that intrinsic awareness. So interesting, in that intrinsic awareness. If the eyes are kind of dumb and dull, then there's no Rigpa. And that's so important. And then he goes on in the end to say, they say that in Kham. Kham's a place in Tibet. So he says that's the saying that goes in Kham. So when people meet you, they should meet this bright, shining eyes, full of enthusiasm and joy. That's how you give over the Dharma. As soon as you're dull and boring, you may do very good shamatha, but you haven't got that joy. And so just to add to that, I looked at an explanation of the word emaho in Tibetan. Now, I use it all the time. I use it more than English words, but sometimes when people are not on a Buddhist path and they tell me something good, and then I send a message, emaho, and then I remember they don't know what it is. So I go, it means how wondrous. Now, this is the meaning of it. Emaho is the shortest Dzogchen teaching. The word means wondrous, amazing, far out, fantastic. It expresses the joy and wonder of discovering within ourselves and our world the innate natural state, the great completeness, wholeness, and oneness of all that is. It delivers to us joyous freedom. Now, those two words are what I want you to have from your practice. Joyous freedom, not a binding thing that's always over your head. Oh my goodness, I haven't done my practice and I don't want to do it today. That's not it. The practice is there, as I've been saying to you for the last 3 weeks, just to remind you of who you are and of where you're going in your life. And I was really pondering or reflecting on the fact that in order to understand the view of non-meditation and contemplation, etc., we have to be introduced in some way to our true natures, to our intrinsic awareness, to Rikpa, to luminosity. We need to have someone point it out to us that already knows it. And then I reflected that in our part of the world, we have little opportunity. We do have opportunity, but very little to meet great masters who can sit down with us and introduce us. And then I used Lama Yeshe Rinpoche's words, and yet, because whenever he wants to tell me, I've told you, whenever he wants to tell me something and I say something, he goes, and yet, because then he's showing me the view from a higher point of view, and he goes, and yet. So I'm going, and yet, how blessed are all of us here who really have the right motivation, devotion, true respect for the Dharma, that we have texts, books, internet access, lots of YouTubes, and we know which are the masters to listen to. We have a dream state in which we can see things, and we have other mystical ways of finding access to our true natures. So even if you haven't had that opportunity to have that introduction, and remember, an introduction can be a tiny little thing. I think when I'm sitting with Lama Yeshe Rinpoche, he's always giving me an introduction to the nature of man. In fact, when he goes, and yet, it's really an introduction to that. So some of us have had the privilege of traveling, in the world and meeting great masters, but we've had lots of opportunities with great beings like Akon Rinpoche when he's here, like Lama Yeshe Rinpoche was living here and intends coming back. And even during COVID, when he was sitting many, many hours in our city, he placed lots and lots for us to pick up. And when you've got a particular devotion to a master, you pick up in your dream state many, many things. And that's why I want to do my retreat on connecting with Guru Rinpoche, because once you make that connection with that near Manakaya, you have got that connection, and then whatever you're doing, you just use that line to go there, okay? And so I asked myself the question in my long pondering, why is it that the teaching that was always totally secret has been allowed to be published and much more open to many more people than the secret, even sometimes whispered lineage of the past, where you could only get that thing from one master to one disciple. And the reason why this has been allowed is that the age of degeneration is really upon us, okay? And it will degenerate more and more if that's possible, because the way the world is now, I'm really worried if it degenerates more. And slowly but surely, these teachings, like Vajrayana and Dzogchen at the top, will disappear on our plane. And they won't disappear altogether. They'll disappear from our level, and they'll just go to the higher realms from whence they came. They'll go back. And this is, so they'll go back from whence they were allowed to be revealed on this desire realm. But if we don't go and pick it up and take some enthusiasm and joy in it, it's going to be gone before we can say Jack Robinson. You can't have many, many lifetimes. And this is what Guru Rinpoche's mandala is all about. It's the principle of it, the near Manakaya of this planet. And we can tap into that source if we are aware of its existence. But so many people are tragically unaware. Even as I was saying to them yesterday, when I listened to one of the services for the Queen, I really thought that is a dualistic service where you're asking for the mercy of God to lift her up, not her own attainment and her own awakened nature. And so many people are tragically unaware that this even exists. And the Dharma protectors and the dakinis are very fierce for those who abuse this opportunity. So if you are lucky enough to pick up some type of introduction, and you are lucky enough to actually understand it, because many times we've already done it before and we need a reminder, if you abuse that or throw it away in any way, there's a big price to pay. And those Dharma protectors and dakinis will see to it. And I just think when I look at people, the other day in the supermarket, I met a man and his wife that came to my doctoral program that I did when I did my doctorate on parent education. Okay, now we're talking about, let's not look at the number of years, but maybe it's 30 years, I don't know, 30, 40 years, I don't know how many years ago I did my doctorate and I did this parent education program. And I happened to meet this man and his wife in the supermarket. I haven't seen him for a very long time. And I got quite a fright because he was walking with a walking stick and he had gray hair. And I know he's kind of my age group, you know, and I sort of thought, God, am I as old as him? But anyway, I looked at him and his wife and we had a little chat. And then afterwards he said to me, you know, Melanie, what you taught me during your parent education groups, he says, I have used it always, always. He said, and you know, I didn't only use it with my children. I applied it in my office. I taught all about power struggles and how to deal with things and everything. And he said, I used it in my office as well, everywhere. So I said to him, well, I'm very delighted to hear. Now, why don't you come and learn some new things from me? Because I've moved on from there. And he said, like what? So I said, like meditation. I was reluctant to mention the word Buddhism because he was Jewish. And I said, meditation and awakening and everything. He said, no, not for me. Okay, so there I was with the bowl in front of me. And I wanted to give you this little story because it happened to me last week. And I really think it's funny because over all the years that I've been teaching, I often meet people that I taught and they have stayed exactly where I was. And I really hope and pray that I've moved further than when I was teaching them. But people are pedantic and they don't want to throw off the lids of their lives. They don't want to discover all these dimensions in themselves. They're perfectly happy as long as life is going, you know, as long as life is going okay. And do you know that with the coming of the next Buddha, Lord Maitreya, all this teaching will have disappeared. There'll be no Vajrayana teaching. Why not when the next Buddha comes? Because Maitri or loving kindness will have to be prevalent again. So when Maitreya comes, there will be Maitri and loving kindness will be the most important thing, not the high teachings which completely liberate you. So it will go back to that kind of situation. So who knows when these opportunities will actually come again? And that's why it's so important that we get the highest view of who we are and what we're supposed to be doing here. And it's like something beckons me to offer whatever I can as an ignorant being. I mean, if I put myself next to a master, I'm a totally ignorant being. But I can offer whatever comes to me because that's what beckons me. And these books, texts, a lot of dreams that I have. I mean, I often have dreams of some of the masters, things in my dream state, and the opportunities land in my hands before I can even understand them. And there's a compulsion to offer them to those who want. And I think it's when your nature of mind starts coming through to your earthly life. That's why I told you last week that Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche said, you've got to apply what you're learning in meditation to your daily life. Otherwise, it's no good. And I think for me, it's really, really important that I was born here to be able to be a teacher of some kind at all different levels through the years. And I think that lately, I've had so many memories just coming up regarding places that I taught and happenings that were beyond my own comprehension. Because if we follow the pattern of our lives, we actually see that there were special reasons why things happened, perfect reasons. And once, when I was coming out of my sleep state, and I usually get direction when I'm waking out of my sleep state, I heard a voice actually saying to me, this is a rehearsal, an audition for you to assess if you're up to the task ahead, not the task in this life, but the task after this life. And that's what I heard. So in my ignorance, I better not fail to do that. And the same with you. And sometimes when I've looked back at some of the memories, they've been unbelievable. Like if I look back to some of the places that I had opportunities to teach, I once landed up, and don't ask me how it was, with a group of pastors of all these clergymen. I don't know how they came to me in a group. And we had this long debate about Christianity. And I remember thinking at the time, what am I doing here? What do I know about what they know? How am I here? But there I was. And another time, I used to give teachings at the Union of Jewish Women. And so these teachings used to be packed for one reason, that I always put a spiritual slant into all. I never gave direct spiritual teaching, but I always put a spiritual chance and a little impetus in, and people liked it. And one day, I taught there for years. And one day, I was in the audience. Mimi, you might have been there. I don't know. You've gone through a lot with me, but I was in the audience and I said something quite spiritual. And a girl got up in the audience. She was a very religious girl and attacked me. And I was so shocked. I remember standing there. And the next thing is, people in the audience started attacking her. And there were actually fights in the audience. Women were fighting with each other. And I remember looking at this and thinking to myself, am I here? Is this for real? Is this really happening? Is this a dream? Of course it's a dream. Everything's a dream. But so many things in so many places where I had challenges and I had to go through those challenges. Now you have to look at your life and you have to realize that meditation, non-meditation, contemplation, pondering is all to bring you back to your nature of mind. And as soon as your nature of mind goes through into the earth work, you'll find that the work you are doing on this earth plane is from your nature of mind going out. And I think it's such an interesting thing. And Eric sent me some tapes today, which I really found very nice, of Alan Wallace's. He's always sending me tapes of, sometimes they're too much for me, but I like those too. And he said, if you don't finish, if you have a great aspiration in your life, like you really want to do something very badly, like say you wanted to be a movie star, or say you wanted to do a particular sport and you wanted to be a gold medalist, or whatever you wanted to be. Maybe you wanted to be something spiritual and you didn't complete it, but you had enough merit. It would go with you into the next lifetime for sure. It would be the residue of the karma that would be motivating you. So when all of you have a deep yearning and a deep feeling of this is what I need to do, go out and do it, because you've got to complete here. That's what we're doing the practice for. We're not doing it to occupy our time. We're doing it so that we can wake up, so that we can stop this wheel of life on and on and on and on. It's very important that we stop and we get off it. And all this wisdom is available for us. And COVID has actually made it more accessible. Like I'm looking at Jade tonight, and she's from Costa Rica, and the two of us worked out that her time to be here tonight is 11 a.m. So we both diarized it, that because she kept missing it, that she's got to tune in at 11 a.m. in Costa Rica. And Kim's tuning in from Wales, where all these things are going on with the Queen and the gun salutes and King Charles visiting the Parliament in Wales. And here she is, you know. Or no, he's visiting the island he's visiting. But all these things have made it possible. And if we don't actually pick up that baton, if we don't pick up who we really are, then what are we doing here? What are we doing here? So let's do a special little meditation tonight to start with, and then I'll throw it open if anybody wants to say anything. Then we'll go straight into just a little summary, 2-minute summary of what we've been doing, and we'll go into contemplation and pondering, and then we'll come back to the meditation, which I want to give you some of Tulku Urjan's real instructions, which are very beautiful and absolutely available. You can hear his voice with them. Okay, all the talking I've been doing today. So, get into your meditation posture, and we're going to do the 9 breaths, cleansing breaths. And again, Eric sent me the most beautiful little clip of Alan Wallace explaining these 9 cleansing breaths. So if some of you want the explanation, just a little clip of the explanation, put your email or your information there, or put it on, if you can, put it on the chat, Eric, because I think it really gives a lovely explanation of the 9 cleansing breaths. Now, I've had teaching on them from Lama Yeshe Rinpoche and from a few people, but he does it really, really nicely. And I always was taught to use the ring finger. And in this thing, he explained that this ring finger has actually got a channel in which quite a lot of your negative energies are transported. So he said, the best thing when you are meditating is to actually hold that thin finger with your thumb and put it into a Vajra fist, holding that finger with the thumb. But he did say when you're doing the breathing to take this index finger. And so what he was really explaining, and those of you that want a little bit of depth of explanation, ask Eric to give it to you, or he's put it onto the chat. And then you can listen to Alan Wallace because he demonstrates it very, very nicely in this little clip. But basically what you are doing, you know, we have 3 main channels in our body. So the central channel is where the non-dualistic energy, all the energy is absolutely flows in the central channel. And once your energy is in the central channel, then you will definitely be in balance and be able to access the nature of mind. I know I was taught, and maybe it is in all people, that women on the left side and men on the right side, you can get the Sanskrit words for those channels. Maybe you know them, Kim, as well. But the channel on the left side is the channel where all the negative emotions flows. And the channel on the right side is a sort of a wisdom channel, but not full, but not the wisdom of absolute non-duality of the center. So when you do these breaths, you actually breathing into the nostril and breathing out of the channel. And he explains very nicely that it goes right around and cleanses. So in the beginning, you're cleansing with the first breath, blue to get rid of all the negative energies, and then red to get rid of all the negative energies. And then through both nostrils, you're doing gray to get rid of all those energies. So it really is a very good little thing if any of you want to watch it. But let's just do the 9 breaths, and then we're going to go into a beautiful meditation, just a short one, very short, from Keith Dowman's Dzogchen Daily Practice, because there's some beautiful meditations there. So, taking your index finger, the right one, holding it over the left nostril, breathe in through the right nostril, and then change it and breathe out. And do 3 like that. And then the other way around. And think of all the negative energy leaving you. And then in through both nostrils and out through both nostrils. See all the gray clouds going out of you. You're getting rid of absolutely everything. In through both nostrils, out through both nostrils. In, out. Now I want you to actually feel how cleansed you are and how you feel cleaned out of all the negative energies. And then we're going to just do a little meditation. So we're going to start with a different refuge. So in your meditation, I want you to see we abide in the nature of mind, and that is our refuge. And rest easy. And then your bodhisattva vow on the top of the mountain. We recognize the spontaneous expression of mind's nature as fulfillment of the bodhisattva vow. So, to put it in simple words, what I am doing in my life, may it really benefit all sentient beings. That's your bodhisattva vow. And on that note, I'm going to put little expressions to you. Don't think about them. Just allow them to go through your being. So we start watching the nature of mind. Relaxing into the natural state of being. bringing the mind back home, resting in the nature of mind, resting, relaxing, doing nothing, no thing, sustaining the 360-degree perspective, a full view, abiding in the nature of mind, being the awareness. I am the awareness. Being without fabrication of body, speech, or mind. So we're not conniving, we're not intellectualizing, we're not fabricating. Without accepting or rejecting. Without cultivating or demolishing. Without approval or denial. Being in non-discrimination. Without intention and without goal. Letting it be just as it is. Hanging loosely in non-action, doing nothing. Now just a teeny guru yoga. In the sky in front, just above the line of sight, visualize a bubble of light. And sitting in that sphere is Samantabhadra Kuntuzangpo. You can even have Guru Rinpoche. The naked, translucent, blue, primordial, all good Buddha or even Buddha nature. A ray of blue light streams from his heart center to our own heart center, saturating, clarifying, illuminating, empowering our entire being. Samantabhadra then dissolves into blue light that streams into your heart center and dissolves into yourself. We dedicate the virtue of this practice to the realization of the great perfection in all sentient beings. There are such stunning meditations in this little book. It's really lovely things to do. You know, lovely things if you like light little meditations and you like to hang loosely and learn. So does anyone want to say anything before I go on to the rest? Shame, Kati, you walking and walking and walking. I get exhausted watching you. But at least she's here. It's wonderful. And at least you've got trains you can go on. We don't. What is the name of the meditation book? Oh, it's called Dzogchen Daily Practice by Keith Dowman. There's a series of about 7 books that he's written, little books like that. They are beautiful, really beautiful. Anyone want to comment, ask, say of all the things I told you before, of the teaching disappearing, of really putting into your life your true nature and your true motivation, of all of that? Does anyone want to say anything or ask anything?
Me always, Mal. I have to stay true to form.
Go on.
So, the channels you're mentioning, left and right, that has to do with why the Buddha chose to move on, laying on his right-hand side, right?
Exactly.
The lion pose or something, I forget what it's called.
And when you go to sleep, the dream yoga meditation that I've been taught is that women should go to sleep on their left sides, and that men should actually go to sleep on their right side. But I've heard it disputed if it's different in men and women. I know the thing I learned, it was different in men and women, and I'm not sure, you know. But the thing is that that it's interesting, because I know that I always go to sleep on the left side, because then you're blocking the channel where all the negative emotions are, and where all the samsaric dreams come from.
No,
So,
I find it quite the business of going to sleep. I'm lying on my back reading most nights, and then I'm ready to go to sleep. And I just close my eyes. My body tells me tonight we're going to start on the left or we're going to start on the right. And I change during the night, but just it's not that I always go one way or the other, but just, okay, tonight is one, tonight is the other. So something's happening that I'm not aware of.
Okay, but your body's telling you how to sleep, and your body tell you. So that's absolutely wonderful. Some people sleep on their backs. I can't sleep it, just sometimes you turn on your back. But when you sleep in the lion posture, whenever you're going to sleep like that, it does help the dream state, and it helps the communication in the dream state and everything. It really does, if you're doing dream yoga. So that's beautiful. Any other points or questions or comments or anything? Shame, some of the people are really having a hard time tonight. I saw lots getting bumped off. Anyone else want anything? Okay, then let's go back to what we were doing. We're going to come back to the category meditation, because I'm going to give you Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche's instructions, which are very, very lovely. But before that, we've still got to do, we touched on the definition of meditation. We did Longchenpa's worldly and trans-worldly meditation, if you remember correctly. We also did that beautiful, from the light of illumination, we did that lovely explanation where he says the essence of meditation is simple, one-pointed, soft-focused abiding, okay? And then we went on to non-meditation last week, okay? And we said the difference was that meditation basically had much more effort, and non-meditation was effortless. You had to apply it in your daily life. And what I said was, Dilgo Khyentse said that the everyday practice of non-meditation is just everyday life itself. And I love that, because you know how often all of you are distracted, and me, in your daily life activities. You're totally distracted. That's not it. You have to get the mind to focus, get the mind into the body, get calm abiding, and then look in, which is so important here for the non-meditation. And he says, you can't strive for such a state, because that's neurotic. And he says, if you're striving and striving, I must not be distracted, I must be aware, then you're going to lose it completely, because there's no way that you can actually, hello Pammy, there's no way that you can actually work that out if you are striving and striving. And I told you from that beautiful book, Samantabhadra's explanation when he gave it to Vajrapani was, the essence of non-meditation is uninterrupted intrinsic presence. And it's called non-meditation because it entails no mental process. Okay, you don't have to do an act, you don't have to do effort, you don't have to do any of those. And he said, and when I was giving it to you last week, I said, the initiatory experience. So in other words, when someone tells you in some way what the nature of mind is, and I asked Annie Lama tonight if she could convince Lama Yeshe Rinpoche to let me do a little interview with him that I could then play to you. I hope we can work it out, Fee. But I want to do an interview with him, not on meditation. I want to do an interview with him as to how the world works when you work from the nature of mind perspective. In other words, what's it like for him when he always sees things from that view on top instead of the way we see things? So anyway, I might get my way and get that interview, because I'm sure that he'll do it if it can be available for other people to listen to as well, and I'll definitely give it back. But non-meditation is achieved by doing nothing at all. No struggle, no effort, no proficiency in any method of meditation, and no cause or condition. And it accommodates everything, whatever you are doing. So I come and meditate. I do my non-meditation practice in the evening. During the morning, I do Vajrayana and all kinds of active meditation practices. But in the evening is my time to sit very, very quietly and just be. And that's my time in the evening. And I take my two doggies, they insist on coming with for the meditation. And sometimes they are restless. Sometimes they get up. Sometimes they climb on my lap. Sometimes they're not comfortable. Sometimes they're thirsty. Sometimes they want a blanket. Sometimes they don't. So I used to get really irritated with them, because I used to say they're disturbing my meditation, my peace, that I'm alone and I can really be at peace. But you know what? What I've learned over the years is that if you keep your mind in that intrinsic awareness, then actually, if you put a blanket over them while they're cold, that's part of it. That's part of your love. That's part of your satisfying them in every conceivable way. That's not a distraction. That's part of the meditation. So now, if I go in, comfort them, or fix them up in some kind of way, and then come back, actually the meditation's even richer and more joyful than it was before. So that's how you train yourself, not to move your mind, just to do the beautiful things you have to do and be right back without it being a distraction. Now, this is a very, very important thing. And when we come back to the non-meditation, I'll give you the different types, and we'll try and do a couple of meditations. But let's go on tonight to contemplation, okay? Because contemplation largely goes together with non-meditation. And Namkha Norbu Rinpoche says that the practice of contemplation consists of abiding in a non-dual state, which of its own nature uninterruptedly self-liberates. You know, the word self-liberating is quite a confusing term for us, because self-liberating doesn't mean liberation of yourself. Self-liberating means it liberates of itself. Now think of all the problems you have in the world, and think of what you do to resolve those problems. Think of all the effort you go. You're angry about something. What should you do about it? You're talking to that person. You're fixating. You're picking it up. You're working out what you should do. When if it was left by itself, it would self-liberate. Why is that? Because it's made of the same material as the essence, your nature of mind. So if you allow it, not you repress it and forget about it and then it's seething inside you, but if you allow it, it liberates of itself. That's what self-liberation is. And everything just keeps liberating. And I see it. I see how it works. So let me give you his definition. He says, again, the practice of contemplation consists of abiding in a non-dual state, which means that you're in a state of intrinsic awareness in which of its own nature uninterruptedly self-liberates. So you don't have to do anything. That anger, that problem, that whatever it is, that poverty, that irritation, that person, that is what you allow uninterrupted self-liberation. It is a complete change of the way we think. And he says, it also governs thoughts, conceptual mental activity, all the functioning of our ordinary conditioned minds. So it's interesting, like Kim, you've just arrived in the UK, okay? And like you would have liked things to work out exactly yesterday, not tomorrow, yesterday. They must all be absolutely perfect. That's how you live your life. But in actual fact, they are all perfect. It's just that we can't see because the circumstances of our life, all the difficulties, all the loneliness, all the angers, all the pains, all the losses, all the queuing in hospitals, Ron and Sharon, everything that we have to do is perfect for what our particular being needs that now. And so there's no unfairness. It's all uninterruptedly self-liberates. The thought still arises, but in contemplation, one isn't conditioned by it. Since the primordial state, which is our beautiful nature that I'm talking about all night, is inherently self-liberating. By simply leaving the thought alone, it liberates of itself. It's such an interesting thing because the primordial state, he says, is inherently self-liberating. In other words, never, ever, ever have I seen a person run into the ocean and go to a wave. Stop, stop, you're going to cause havoc. Or you're too small, or my son wants to, what do you call it? I can't think of the word, I've got too many words. Wants to, what's the name on it? You know, escape, wants to go on a board on it. I can't think of the word, okay? You can't do that with a wave, because a wave will come up, and even if it's enormous and causes a tsunami, it will go back into the ocean. And if it's little, it'll go back into the ocean. And the same with our thoughts, our feelings, our situations. They will self-liberate. They will go back into the essence willy-nilly by leaving it alone. So like non-meditation, in contemplation, in Dzogchen, the mind makes no effort whatsoever. And I put in brackets, sure. Sure. Isn't it nice when you come home and a job is done and you go, phew, that's that's what it's like all the time. It's not running anywhere, nothing to do or to abstain from doing, since what is already self-perfect, just as it is left alone in its own condition. And we've all got the conditions, the moods, the feelings, the circumstances that we need in order to reach our nature of mind, full stop. And one could say that contemplation is maybe the way of non-meditation, because in contemplation, you also learn a couple of things that you can do to help you self-liberate, because you can self-liberate immediately, instantaneously, or you can self-liberate by suddenly becoming aware that the thought is there, and then you let it, and so there's a bit of a gap between when it comes up and when it self-liberates. It's up to whatever you've got. I'll give you a chance in a moment to ask me. So Namkha Norbu says, in meditation, one could do practices that involve working with a dualistic relative mind so as to enable us to enter a state of contemplation. So in other words, what he's saying is that, for instance, if you do the Nondro practices, you are preparing that mind so that it can go into a state of contemplation. And he says, once we have a taste of the true intrinsic rikpa, the nature of mind, then all our doubts start clearing, and we can be in a state of contemplation with every action and situation. Very exciting. Because it really, really, really does. And you know, to go back to my story at the beginning, that Samten Gyatso had these eyes that shone with rikpa, with intrinsic awareness. So when he looked, I remember so many times sitting in Taisitu's presence. And that year, I was just so lucky to have so many hours with him. And I remember sitting in his presence, and his eyes used to pierce the inside of me, like he could see everything. And that's what we're developing, so that our eyes are bright, and they are shining, and they are full of the joy of the Dharma. And you could start seeing things very quickly with people. Someone said to me today, but why has this happened to me? And I said to this person, you know what? I know that you're crying about what has happened to you, but I'm not. So she said, why not? I said, because I can see this disaster that you've been going through. I said, I can see so clearly with my eyes that you've been heading for a state of disaster over several lifetimes. And so you came into this lifetime with this need for perfection, and you did some very stupid things to try and make yourself perfect, and it landed up in a heap, in a disaster. And I said, I'm clapping for that, because your nature of mind has shown you that this disaster is to stop you dead in your tracks and put you on the right road. Now imagine you see your disaster like that, rather than the way you're seeing it. I can see you all concentrating like anything. So I'm not complaining, but please ask or say. Then we'll do a little contemplation exercise, and then we'll go on to pondering. And then if we've got time, we could do some of the other meditations. Ask me or comment. Tell me what you feel. Tell me what inspires you, what you can relate to, how you feel.
Well, I just think it's such a refreshing way of being, because we're so used to judging all of our thoughts and judging everybody around us, instead of just letting it be, a good, positive, negative, and neutral. Just let everything happen, It's and by letting it work its way out, it self-liberates, and then we can learn from it, It's
Absolutely.
just living in a state of just letting things be, just being.
I
It's
know.
just, it makes a
It's
huge
why,
difference.
I know, but why is it the most difficult thing for us to learn? What
Because
is
we're
it
so
that
used to, I think, because we're used to striving, first of all,
Yeah.
because we've been told you've got to be something, and if you're not good enough. You're not,
Yeah.
we put ourselves under so much pressure,
Yes, we
and
do.
it's an illusion.
Yeah. 100% agree with you. And thanks for that, because it's really important that all of you are listening and you're actually taking this in, because it's time for change. Because what I
Yeah.
tried to do at the beginning of this session was I tried to tell you that this time of what is available will be up. It will be withdrawn. When I first heard that the next Buddha would not, that Vajrayana practice would not be allowed on this level, I was so sad. Because I thought, it's so sad that here it is, and so relatively, so few people can relate to it. And then when they do, they often use their ordinary mind to relate to things. Like to say, oh, you believe in Buddhas. Well, what are Buddhas? Buddhas are awakened beings. They're not little statues on a shrine. That's just a symbol of what the Buddha is. But the meaning is to awaken inside. And that, as you get older, that becomes more and more and more imperative. Because every time I think of wasting an incarnation, and you don't know how many people I see that are in the process of wasting another opportunity, open portal to unity with your true nature. How many people are wasting this life? And that's why the planet comes down so hard on us. When I see famine, and I see floods, and I see droughts, and I see, earthquakes, and all sorts of things, like I go, can't people see that Mother Earth is trying to tell us something we need to really change? And these things that I'm telling you about are the tools that we've got to change. And Martin was funny because he says he listened to last week's talk when I was talking about the person going up the mountain and how the old people just flowed in India, and that he saw the mountain as a test. So he said, he texts me and he says, Melanie, he said, every morning I go jogging up the hill and it's such an effort. He said, and this just hit me in the face, why am I going up the hill with such an effort? He said, when actually, if I was one with myself, with my nature, I'd just fly, and I probably wouldn't even need to run up a steep hill or something every day. And I laughed at this a lot. He said, I just realized how I'm not, when I listened to it, he said, I realized how I'm often not in harmony with myself. And lots of us aren't, because we use the Western thing of everything as a test, and I've got to be the best at what I do. And we miss the point. We miss the point of what we're doing here. So I'm shouting what we're doing here. So let's do a meditation unless anybody wants to say something.
I want to say something quick, Mel, and I'm glad you mentioned the West, because that's actually the reason why it's such a habit to grab onto things, to reify, to, latch on, try do something with them. It's the Eurocentric civilization. How many times have we been told to not just sit there, but do something stupid? We live in this world where the whole thing is to go out and get and to gain and to acquire and to consume. And it's always outer, outer, outer. And it's just a habit. And now that it's gone global, the whole world has fallen into this trap. But in the first cycle of teachings, there's this saying where the rock is fine as it is. You look at a big rock, you're like, oh, it's fine. As soon as you try pick it up, now it's a problem, it's heavy. Same with your thoughts. Only when you pick them up, they become a problem. You go and you try, leave them be, and they're just fine.
They're fine and they dissolve. And that's the point. And did we learn from 2.5 years of COVID isolation? I don't think so. I don't think we learned. I don't think the planet on a whole learned. I really, really don't. And that was a big test. It really was a big test. And people were just waiting until they could go back to what they were. So it's quite sad. So let's do a contemplation. So we're going to start by just the sentence in Dzogchen. The essential point is the state of contemplation. That is the state of immediate intrinsic awareness. And I know you've all heard that line. But right now, in this very moment, please be in a state of immediate intrinsic awareness. Be alive. Be pulsating with everything around you. Be in touch. Be in tune. Be joyful. Just be present. How many times do we talk to people and their bodies are there? They might even vaguely be listening, but they're not present. The mind is not present. And being present doesn't mean latching onto the present. It means just being alive, open, aware, light, luminous, right now. Totally aware of everyone in the room, of what's going on, of my voice, of everything. Neither the calm state of shamatha practice, nor the movement of thoughts, vipassana practice, represents rigpa. Rigpa can be discovered in either of these two experiences. Rigpa is not the experience itself, but the immediate awareness of that experience. So I want you to be right here with me. Feel and be present in my enthusiasm. Pick it up. Don't hold on to it. Just let it ride through your being. Contemplation, internal awareness, and external appearance encounter each other. Imagine encountering every experience of your whole day. Your internal awareness is a tool that encounters every single external appearance. And as they encounter each other, they become integrated. They are one. There's no you and me. We are absolutely integrated with everything around us, present, alive, aware, intrinsically aware. As soon as we start to separate ourselves from the appearance, we are in duality, subject and object, me and you. Now, right now, I want you to be totally beyond that. Just integrate with this room right now, with me, with my voice, with all the things happening in your homes, with the dark of load shedding and the light of electricity, with everything. Your internal awareness meets the external appearance. They encounter each other and they are fully integrated, no matter how difficult the circumstances are right now. And if today you had some negative thoughts, or you've got any right now, or feelings, don't pick them up. Just know that they are there. Just know that your mind is like a mirror, and they are just a reflection in the mirror. Don't suppress them. Don't pick them up. Don't analyze them. Just let them integrate with your awareness, and it all becomes one. Could you feel that? Such a beautiful way to live. So now I wanted to do that talk urgent thing, but I can't. So let's just do pondering and let's put it with Diana's reflection. Okay. So I think this is a very important thing. They all follow up. So when you do meditation, you usually do, which we'll come to now, a kind of an effort to place your mind somewhere. But these next practices have no effort to place your mind anywhere. So for some people, they prefer to place their mind to have something that they are doing. And other people prefer not to have an effort. So you've got to find practices that suit you. They're practices, I mean, the Buddha gave 84,000 ways of meditating. So there's got to be one that really resonates with you. That even if you take 3 minutes in your day, if you're in a busy day of work, and you just sit and you just suddenly become aware really aware, and then you take it into your work, whatever you're doing. But pondering is my own term. I use it such a lot. Okay. Sometimes during practice, I use it. Sometimes when I wake up from my sleep, I use it. Sometimes, anytime, any place, I use this pondering. Okay. Now, the first thing about it is it must be distinguished from thinking. Because thinking, like we're talking about, thinking is an effort to think something through. Now, if I thought through the talks that I was going to give you, there would be no way that I could give you a different talk for 52 weeks of the year or something. I wouldn't be able to, because when you think, you limit, you place the mind and you limit it completely. When you ponder, it's like, so thinking involves the intellect, the SEM part of your mind, with much more effort and much more involvement in resolving things. But with pondering, it's like you drop a stone into the water, and then the water makes ripples of its very own accord. And those ripples are really important because you're just observing the ripples. And then what happens is something can arise in the mind, and I sit pondering it like non-meditation and contemplation, and it works itself out. And then there's some kind of a dawning that comes into you. It's not a thinking and a solution. It's just a dawning, awakening up of the wisdom that you've got. And it's different to non-meditation or contemplation in that usually some sentence, some thought, some incident, some phenomena sets it off. And then it goes through the ripple emotion, and then the insight arises. No fixating, no gripping, and no thinking. So after I've pondered, I often say sometimes to myself, oh, so that's what that was about. Because it comes to you. It's the wisdoms playing themselves out inside you rather than the intellectual mind, which wants a solution that is there. Now, sometimes I'm doing a practice in the morning, and there's a sentence that I've been using for months. And suddenly, I can't explain it. I read that sentence, and I kind of drop it, and suddenly there's a dawning what it means. And I've never understood the meaning for all the time that I've used that sentence. And that's what I like to define. It doesn't matter if you use pondering, reflection, or whatever, but the dawning comes from a different consciousness. And really, I want you to differentiate this pondering from thinking. Because when you've got a problem, say there's a problem you've got to solve, you really sit down and think and think and think. And it's exactly when I decide, oh gosh, what am I going to teach you next time? I can think the whole night with my human intellectual mind, and I will never find what I want to find. But the minute I just allow it, I let it drop. I know that I'd like to give you something on meditation or something like that, and I drop it. And the next thing is it arises. And when I've got to write it to Nadine on my newsletter, there's the sentence, absolutely clear in my mind. So it's a very amazing way, even when you're working. Because when you're working, you're told to order your mind with certain things and with logic, but there's no logic to it. What do you think? Or what do you ponder?
I
Yes.
agree 100%. If you tighten your mind too hard, it goes back to what you were saying earlier. You try too hard, it constricts the mind. It reduces the ability for thoughts to even flow. The moment you let it go, the mind opens up, you know, and that's when it allows for the thoughts to come through.
The nature of mind opens up, not the intellect. And sometimes the intellect gets scared when it's happening on another level away from you. You think, oh my God, how am I going to put this over? Because people aren't going to understand, you know.
100%.
I think it's really, really important, all of this. Like in your Alan Wallace tape, you know, he was actually saying that the Dalai Lama was talking to an audience of non-Buddhists. And what did they asked about the bardo? No, they didn't ask about the bardos. They asked something about afterlife.
It was about Pure Lands. And of course, he acted like he didn't know about Pure Lands because he was speaking to like a secular audience.
So he just said what he hopes when he dies, that he will just be in a nice state of mind or something. He puts it in for them, you know, he never puts in a concept or anything that people wouldn't be able to relate to in that audience.
I think he said something about, I'll go to heaven. If I don't find one, I'll come back here and do good.
That's right.
Something like that.
He said something like, oh, well, I hope that I will go to heaven. He used heaven, you know, because that would be something people could actually relate to. It was very lovely, you know, rather than saying, I'll go to a pure land created in my mind, and then people would think he was crazy. So I think pondering is the most wonderful, wonderful thing to do. And I think when you're in a pickle and when you're in a difficult situation in your life, where things aren't working out in the way you'd really like them to, or you land up in a situation you just can't believe you're in this situation, you're actually trying to work out in your mind, how did I get to this? How did I get into this huge fight with this person? How did I get into this dispute? How did I get into talking about this? You're wondering. Don't drop it, because so many times when the nature of mind is working, it's bringing through the things you need to do, the things you need to say. And when you surrender to it, it's just a completely and totally different way of life. Because imagine, we're all in the perfect situation. Doesn't that seem crazy, Marcel? We're all in the perfect situation after all the things you've been through. How can it be perfect? It's perfect. As long as you look at yourself and you say, you know, I've transformed my whole being. It's amazing. But a lot of people, when they go through difficulties, they become tighter. They become more rigid. They become more scared. They become absolutely petrified that things won't work out for them. So they hold tighter to the little they've got. You just always got to remember that, you know, the Buddha, what happened was people went and gave offerings to the Buddha. And this old woman, you know that beautiful story, she didn't have any money and she couldn't find a butter lamp and everything. And she went to the shop and she asked the guy, please, these are the pennies I've got. He said, my dear woman, these will not buy you butter for your butter lamp. And she said, I'm begging of you, I'll give you every single cent. I need to light a lamp for the Buddha. Anyway, she struggled, and eventually I think he got so irritated with her, he gave her a little bit of butter for her lamp. And she went and she lit the lamp with everybody else's millions of beautiful lamps for the Buddha. And the next morning, when all the lamps had finished, her lamp was still burning. And the more the monk tried to put the lamp out, because all the lamps had to be out, it was now daytime, he couldn't. And the Buddha said, don't put that lamp out, because that lamp comes from her heartfelt generosity, and you'll never be able to put it out. Now, isn't that a lovely attitude, a joyous attitude to have when you're struggling, when you're really struggling with everything in your life, even finances, but not only finances, with illness, with trials, with tribulations and everything, to just know I'm in the perfect spot. And this is what I need. And what I have to do is surrender with intrinsic awareness to that beautiful nature of mine. It's enormous, it's spacious, and it's got room for everything, good and bad, as I've taught them on a Monday morning. The mandala, the pure mandala, which is made of everything pure, the pure mandala contains the negative and the positive. Why? Because the negative is the positive if you view it in a different way. And that's what all this meditation is about. That's what all this contemplation is about. Being able to live in your life in a beautiful, joyous, light shining way, luminous way. And then you've got what you need from the practice, and it'll take you right into other lifetimes. And the fact that most of you are very quiet is fine, because I can see, thank goodness I've got cameras on, that a lot of you are debating and deeply looking at all of this. And then next week, we'll start with Tulku Urgent's instructions on how to do shamatha and vipassana, how to put them together with a higher view, which is really beautiful. Okay. Seems to be enough for you to digest for one night. I can't go on with all the millions of pages I've got here. So let's end, and then if anybody wants to ask me or talk to me, but if you don't, and you're going to go to bed just now, just remember to take that with you to bed. And the practice before you go to bed is, can you get the for me? Or will it be a problem without, oh, the load shedding's finished, that's why you laughed. So is mine, and I'm grateful that everything stayed on from the inverter. Just give us that and then let's just do this teeny practice for before you go to bed. And so you take that mood with you into your sleep so that you can sleep in the clear light. If you can get me that okay. So now, everybody, before you go to bed, you sit with the okay? You sit with the in front of you, with its beautiful, pure rainbow light around it. And that visualization you put into your heart. So that is the out of the comes all the creation. So out of your from your heart, beautiful rainbow colored rays go out of the from your heart. And as they hit all the appearances around you through the window in your household, okay, you watch them just dissolve. And they come back into the in your heart. And so everything is integrated into that beautiful and that's how you go to sleep. Everything arises, everything dissolves back into the and that's a beautiful practice to go to sleep with full awareness. Thanks, Bea. So let's dedicate for all sentient beings, for all the people suffering, for all the people going through all sorts of things. And through this merit, may we achieve all-seeing Buddhahood. And thereafter, once all harmful enemies have been defeated, may all beings be liberated from the ocean of existence, stirred by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane, topne nipe dranam tamshene, jeganachi balap dropaye, sipe sole, doa dro warsho.